All right. Hello there, and welcome to the Second Life Book Club. My name is Draxtor Dupre, and we are at an unusual time. This is the 11 o'clock hour in Second Life, 11 o'clock Second Life time. Usually we're at 12, but this is another free for all, and the free for all means that we have no guest, but we have many guests. We have guests that are made. The audience are the guests, basically. Every one of you guys is the guest, except for my little dog. This is my little dog Gustav. I have him with me today. He says hello. He was in a movie, so he's still attached to me, literally. He's very attached to me because I'm his person, and he's also attached to me in the physical realm. He looks exactly like this dog in the physical realm. He sits there when I reread Infinite Jest for the fifth time. Here's Infinite Jest. This is ominous because I might be reading an excerpt. So, hello there and welcome everybody. Bunny McCloud, Stranger, Roxy, Little Brat. Flenza Jürgens is back over there here in the back. Paradise Quixote. Nastya Shai is brand new here at the book club, and True Vortex, who will be summoned today because she has some explaining to do. She has a beef with J.D. Salinger, and we will get to the bottom of this. Nastya is joining us from Ukraine today. I don't know if she's actually in Ukraine, but she is from Ukraine. So here she is, and we welcome her. And here comes Shyla, and I think Shyla checked if if people are hanging out at the ground level because we're here in the cafe. Here's Yarrow Bumblefoot. Maybe Yarrow Bumblefoot was not able to come up here, but anyways,
She was hanging
she was hanging at the
at
ground
the
level.
welcome area. Yeah,
Yeah, we should. We have
and
our own welcome area. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah.
and Nastia's a friend of mine, and if I understand correctly, she's in Western Ukraine right now, but
Hmm.
she's from Kiev.
Amazing. It's really, really wonderful. I was just reading a book today, a nonfiction book that is very critical, a sociological book that looks at a prominent German sociologist who was talking about very nuanced about um, communities and the erosion of political communities in the physical realm because the digital realm makes it irrelevant. That's not what he says. I don't want to. I don't want to. Ah, I shot myself in the foot there because it's hard to summarize this argument, but it has to do with um, with Nastya and us here because the point that he's making is that the erosion of sort of traditional communities in the physical world is making it easy for right-wing movements to actually gain ground. And it's a big book, and the argument I cannot so quickly summarize without doing it justice. But as I was reading this, and he doesn't say specifically the digital realm is all crap, like a lot of people say, but he says the digital realm, that the fracturing of everything through the internet is making these is destroying these local communities and young people. There's a correlation between young people not being engaged in local communities, and I was like, I was yelling at the book, said, you know what? We have a global community, and we meet here and we transcend these cultural boundaries. And when we go back out into the realm, into the physical realm, I'm absolutely convinced we take what we learn here, uh, crossing these boundaries. If we choose to, uh, we take it out with us and we apply it, right? Anyway, preaching to the choir at the Church of Draxology. Speaking of churches, Little Brat is from a country where churches are burnt. It's the country of Norway. And I'm sorry, this is a lame joke, and look it up. But Kitten Duo is also on the stream here. Kitten Duo, welcome, Kitten Duo. She says, "Oh, I hope that is not meant in pain." But Kitten is. Oh, I think Kitten was reacting to Gustav here, Gustavo. Look, he's just going across. I think books and dogs definitely mix. So, how should we start today? I have an idea. And today, definitely, I do want to read my Infinite Jest, little excerpt from Infinite Jest, which is hilarious that you will love. It's about video telephony, and I'll set it up a little bit later. But with the war machine turning um, in the physical realm, a machine that destroys uh, humanity and human beings, all the while enriching very few at the top. We have to walk and chew gum at the same time. I believe we need to help people, and we need to see that there are people who um, benefit, and yeah, there is a term called disaster capitalism that actually thrives on disaster. But in times of these, I believe strongly um, we should engage with more art from, that's at least what I do, uh, from the region. I have, for example, a small Ukrainian classic shelf, mainly Gogol. I hope I don't mispronounce him, Nikolai Gogol, and a big Russian shelf. And I have picked out a few books that I want to read when I'm done with the book that I'm reading right now, which is a Pynchon book, because I want to engage with the culture of the region through literature. So I have Tolstoy, War and Peace next to me, very close, a huge book. But I think last week I talked about my book anxiety that I can't. Yeah, and me too, Shyla. And there is, now I have to look it up again. There is a Ukrainian poet that is the um from the 1500s here. Let me see. Um, and I had it bookmarked somewhere. I can't find it right now.
Shevchenko?
Sevchenko. There you go. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I'll get a link.
Exactly. So please find a link because Koptzar, this is, I have this on order. Koptzar is the seminal work that kind of defines Ukrainian culture, at least from from according to Wikipedia in my local bookstore. So that is on order. And Koptzar, I think, is the you can get it for like $20 for on as an ebook, and that's the entire oeuvre. I need to find a way to quickly post this also on the YouTube chat so that people know. Here you go. Yeah, Shyla posted it in the local chat, and I'm going to cut and paste it from the local chat. But I have my YouTube monitor on the other machine. But now I'm going to post it into the YouTube chat, and I hope we don't get total feedback because now I'm bringing this up. But here we go. And now I can post it here to the YouTube folks. Hello, Birgit Bloom. Now, um, yeah, so that's what's going on in the world. What do you guys do? This is what interests me. What do you guys do when the world um, is devolving into chaos, and a lot of people, including myself, um, would say that the world is somewhat always in chaos, and as Angela Davis puts it, um, freedom is a constant struggle. So when you're talking about people that are not necessarily privileged, they wake up in the morning and there's always a fight. So of course this is different when a brutal dictator declares war. Uh, the escalation is different from a struggle that is sort of constant, but you can at least, for the most part, you're not threatened to be killed um, by going across the street, which some minorities, the minority population of some countries, some Western industrialized countries, actually do fear. But I digress. I'm wondering what you guys do in a situation like this to stay mentally healthy, um, in the context of reading. And folks on YouTube can also chime in here. Do you pick out, I don't know, comfort food, romance novel? I'm always like dumping on romance. I don't. You know, something predictable, something that soothes you, something, a text where you know that you had a good feeling, it gave you something to escape. You know, essentially, we're talking about escapism. Um, and Shyla knows this. I do the opposite, and I'm not saying the one thing is better than the other. We're trying to communicate here what we do. I go to literature that explains to me the, the the history, the context of the region very often, and I go to things that are maybe hard to digest. What comes to mind is The Kindly Ones by Jonathan Lethel about World War II. Jonathan Littell, The Kindly Ones. Maybe Shala, you can look this up on Wikipedia and put it in here. This is a brutal book about a brutal SS officer. Some have rejected this book. It was universally heralded by the critics and everybody in the establishment, and also was a huge commercial success. But some have called this violence porn or something. I don't think it's gratuitous. It shows the brutality of World War II. Um, Now, I don't know why I'm genetically genetically dispositioned to be able to read this kind of stuff without wanting to jump out the window. But it gives me an insight into the brutality of these people. It makes them real. Not that I don't think that they're real, you know, Putin and people like that. These are these people are evil. They go over dead bodies. I know that these people exist, but for some reason I gravitate towards narratives that are difficult, like that when the world is in turmoil. And I remember Infinite Justice about mental illness, Infinite Justice about addiction, and I remember my friend who was struggling with depression. I gave I gave Infinite Jest to her 40th birthday. She was like, "What are you doing? You want to kill me? This is terrible." I go like, "Why? This is cool." There's a talk show host. Her name is Madame Psychosis. It's great. So let me read some chat here because I'm babbling on. And Athena, oh, look at this. Athena is on the YouTube chat. Athena, I was just mentioning you, telling folks that it's so awesome. You sent me a list of books from Malaysia, and I have an email to answer to you. I apologize. Email correspondence is slow with the movie in production, post production. But yeah, Athena emailed me these books. So please, if you come from a specific cultural realm that is not my own, and my own realm is the Bavarian realm. Holareti, holareti, holareti. So anything that is not to do with yodeling or lederhosen and the von Trapp family, then I don't know about it. So I need emails with lists. Amber is saying she's watching on YouTube as well since I can't be in World at the moment. Um, yeah, and Kitten says is what she was mentioning the dog earlier. She was not saying that I'm somehow cute or something. Let's look at the chat. Birgit Bloom, read less uh, quote unquote news sources. Absolutely. Doom scrolling, but that's the thing. I think there is an affliction to doom scrolling that is very widespread, and the way to combat that uh, is to take walks in nature, or again, maybe take up a book or an audiobook, something, a sprawling epic narrative. It's my recommendation. Here, Bunny McCloud, It's a Little Life by Hanya Yanagiara. Now, Bunny, I want your opinion on Hana Yanagiara. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Nastya Shai is posting a link here, poem by Ivan Franko. I'm clicking on it. Um, Ivan Franko, I suppose, is a Ukrainian author, and I wonder if Shaila wants to. Shaila is our poet in residence. I don't know, Shaila. I'm putting you on the spot here. Maybe you want to read it. Don't feel obligated, but please look at the link, and I'll give you the stage. It's a relatively short poem. I think that that would be very nice. Flenza says, satisfied I have a good idea of everything going on, then just relax for an hour or two with music. Winter consort, good, or for forgetting the world. Um, Now, Paradise says, recently read The Nightingale about women in World War II, but after reading This Tender Land, reading for escapism mystery books by this author, William Kent Kruger, about Northwest Minnesota, and as little news as possible. Um, let me please allow me to say, as a former news guy, news director of a small news station, that very often, and I think you guys are aware of this, what we call news very often nowadays is basically endless opinion and punditry. There used to be, at least in the American context, four news bureaus. They have all been but dismantled for cost reasons. The people who you see on television, for the most part, commenting on issues are quite ill-informed and maybe well-meaning, but not well informed, and been thrown into this assignment sort of very, very quickly. That people live on the ground, um, reporters, uh, that unfortunately those days are gone, and that is something that is incredibly important. But news operations, at least in America and also in Germany to a large extent, have been dismantled, have been cut, and this is to the detriment of really deep context. So people who live on the ground for years and are able to really comment in depth about a culture to their readers and viewers at home, these people are not there. The Well, yeah, I mean, the I'm not Birgit. Yes, that is of course true that there is also propaganda, and especially when news stations are owned by specific owners and stuff like that. It's not only in Russia but also elsewhere. Uh, that is even a bigger problem. But I'm talking about the more basic problem of regular news, trusted news sources having cut their budgets, and people who have uh, knowledge, intimate knowledge of a region, be this Russia, Afghanistan, Iraq, whatever it is, even Europe, they're not. These boroughs have been dismantled for cost reasons. Um, the Pope news, yeah, I guess I missed that. So now, I'm looking at the YouTube chat. Amber says, what some people do to cope with rough times. Sadly, it's apparent that a lot of people turn to social media, which likely worsens a person's mental state. I would say, you wanted to type, rather than soothe it. That's absolutely true. The I don't want to belabor the point and waste the hour of dumping on social media. We should be aware of this. I think it's incredibly important to calm the mind by engaging deeply with something, and it can be online, but you should go to a text and immerse yourself in that world. What's interesting, because I was writing the music for this movie I'm working on, and I had to transcribe a demo tape from like 24 years ago. I recorded a demo of a song with some kind of complicated chords, and it's on a cassette tape, and it was layered, different layers of different guitars. Um, and I had to transcribe it because I didn't have any record of it. I didn't write a lead sheet or anything. So I was immersed in that little piece for like 2 days, and that felt so soothing to shut out the world and work so kind of deeply trying to figure out this musical piece. Um, Birgit Bloom, did I miss the memo where we changed format from author interviews to chat gathering? Yeah, I guess you did. But we all miss things. So it's in the group chat. It's on all the social channels, and it's also in the calendar. But let me just briefly say that today is a free for all, as we mentioned last week, and in the group chat and in the um, in the group notices, and on the social channels and on the calendar. The calendar, I always recommend. I say this every week. Check the calendar and put it to your calendar. You can link it. It's very easy, and then you never miss an author that you otherwise would miss. So, yeah, that's it. The calendar is publicly accessible, Birgit. That was a big concept from the very beginning because I think it's very important. People have their favorite authors, and so they want to know that. But I also sent the notices out, of course. But the calendar is probably the best bet, I think. So let's, um, yeah. Would Shyla, would you like to read the a poem? Okay, then I will read it. And this is from Ivan Franco. Maybe Nastya, you want to tell us a little bit about Nastya Franco, Nastya Franco, Ivan Franco. Is he a contemporary author? Oops, I think Nastya disappeared. I will read this poem because Nastya was so nice as to share it, something that soothes her. Real quick, in terms of the calendar, if folks are confused how the book club works, I highly recommend just checking the group. If you click on the land tool, you can be invited into the group, or you find all the links in the land and around the island. There are sandwich boards all over the three islands. So if you're just tuning in on YouTube here and don't know what we're doing, you go into Second Life or you go to the destination guide on the Second Life webpage, secondlife.com. You will find the link to the calendar. You will find the link to the three islands. You will find the link to the Discord group, all in one place, actually in several places, all around the islands and also in the land tool and in the group notices, of course. Here's Nastya is back, and I'm going to read a poem by Ivan Franko, and the poem is called The Spirit of the Revolt. The spirit of revolt abides, spirit which spurs flesh to endeavor, to fight for freedom, progress ever, lives with us still, it has not died. No tortures of the Inquisition, nor strong built walls of Tsarist prison, neither armies strongly mustered, nor cannon primed around it clustered, nor the spy's art conceal its doom, nor force it down into the tomb. It does not die, lives with us still, though born 1,000 years back, coddled till yesterday, but now unswaddled, forward it strides by its own will. Ever more powerful, stronger growing, thither it speeds where dawn is glowing. Its word of power, like a revel, calls millions forth with it to rally, and millions follow and rejoice, led onwards by the Spirit's voice. The Spirit's voice is heard far round in hen-coop homes of peasant wretches, among the workers' factory benches. Through tears and sorrow it resounds, and where that voice is heard, there vanish away their tears. Misfortune, anguish, courage, and strength are born within them. To cease their grief, strive onward, winning, if not for self, a better life, then for their children in the strive. The spirit of revolt abides. Spirit, knowledge, thought, and freedom shall never yield, and the impeding darkness shall never stay its tide. Evil and ruins fell around us, the avalanche sped rolling downwards. Where in this world such mighty forces to halt it ever onward courses, or like a fire to quench away the sparks of its unfolding day? That's Ivan Franko, The Spirit of Revolt. I'll paste it into the local chat and also in the YouTube chat. Thank you, Nastya. The reason why I mentioned Bunny mentioned the book by Jesus, what's her name? Help me out. Hana. I have to look it up. Hana Yanagiara. Hana Yanagiara. So she wrote a book, To Paradise. And this is interesting because the reason why I'm asking you how this book is, and maybe you want to do a book report on it, but my wife is from Hawaii, and she's looking around for books from Hawaii of people who grew up in Hawaii, writers who grew up there and that have somewhat of a Hawaiian theme. So she comes across Hanya Yanagiara, her book To Paradise. Very much in people's discussions, right? Very famous author. Um, and so she buys this book, and I'm relating her, and I'm an open book, so to speak, as an extrovert. So I'll share with you what kind of interesting insight I have with her. So she buys this book, and actually she looks it up and she puts it into the basket for our local bookstore. And then I order some other books, and then I didn't see it, so I she just placeholded it there, and I ordered it, and then I go to the bookstore and go like, oh wow, I didn't order this. Maybe my wife did. So I buy it and I bring it home. She goes, oh, I just wanted to park the book there to Paradise, and go like, yeah, why? Well, I heard a lot about this author, and she's from Hawaii, and she's like, I want to know about contemporary Hawaiian authors and stuff like that. And my wife grew up working class. Her father was a cab driver, former army, was in Korea, older. She was the youngest of four kids, so he was born Jesus, born 28, 1928 maybe. Korean War, trained in Fort Ord, Monterey in the uh, late 40s. Was in Cuba before Castro came in. Was expelled. Really cool guy. So I'm telling you all this because then she picks up this book by Hanya Yanagiara, To Paradise. She starts reading it, and I go like, so how's this book? And she goes like, I don't know. The Hawaiian character is like, he comes from like modest means in Hawaii, and then he's going to New York, and he's like, so like, gushing over the wealth, and it's really gross and disgusting. I expected something very different. And I go like, well, maybe this is what the book is kind of, you know, looking at the classism of America and how Native Hawaiians are, a minority that is suppressed by money and pushed back, and the gentrification of Hawaii. And she goes, no, I don't think so. I think the book is really sort of enamored with wealth and parties and all this kind of stuff. And then she sends me an article from the New Yorker about this woman. And again, I'm not judging this woman. She can do whatever she wants, that author. So my wife sends me an article where the New Yorker does a profile on Hanya Yanagiara, and she says, well, high-powered fashion editor for fashion magazine, but by night she's a um, best-selling author, and she still has time to do like the fashion circuit and whatnot, and she can do like parties and still write these books. And then there's all these glamorous photos, and I go like, okay, say to my wife, say, well, you show me, excuse me, but you show me a profile of this author and kind of what her values are and what she, again, what she finds important. And this is not a judgment on her style or her literary qualities, but that a woman like this is a little bit oblivious as to the class issues that are very prevalent in, especially on Hawaii. And how the native Hawaiian population is pushed into service sector precarious jobs while the Japanese folks buy up the island and basically put the native population into indentured servitude because of rising prices, blah, blah, blah. Uh, I mean, that's really not surprising. So this is not, again, so in closing, I would never pick up this book ever because I'm just not interested in a uncritical um, I don't know, fish out of water, like, poor gay Hawaiian kid comes to New York and is sort of brought into the scene or whatnot. Again, I haven't read the book. This is in conversation with my wife, and call me judgmental. Yes, I judged the author based on this New Yorker article. As someone who comes from a certain milieu, that I'm not interested in the machinations of that milieu. I want to learn more about human nature. I want to learn more. And again, I mean, maybe the book is about this, but again, from my wife's point of view as a native Hawaiian from a working class background who is very well read, comes the review between us and the viewers on YouTube that this book is, if you expect an insight into uh, the class struggle of Hawaiians in the American context, this is not your book. So, if you want to know how uh, a poor kid parties in the 80s, I don't know. Now I'm getting so I okay. I'll shut myself up because again I haven't read it. But I guess this also illustrates that this is an important difficult question. Can someone from a certain class background transcend where he comes from and understand? And Tolstoy comes to mind now, and many others. I think any good writer is able to very truly embody their characters and get into their minds and also their experience within a classist society. And that's really what interests me. We talk a lot about Steinbeck here. Charlotte's mentioned Steinbeck. Steinbeck is one of a great example of a moral writer with deep insight. Now, again, I'm not saying that Hanya Yanagiara doesn't have morals. I'm not saying that. I'm just putting two and two together. You see, I'm putting together my wife's sort of lackluster response to this particular book. Maybe the other book is different. Again, this is a book that juxtaposes uh, a Hawaiian kid from a working class background coming into New York into this sort of uh, posh scene, and and that is sort of my wife's assessment is that it fails to really explore the problems and is sort of very superficial in depicting the kid being like really like uh, blown away by the wealth and wanted to get into this. Now, again, I mean, this could be, Bonfire of the Vanities. We're not. This is a different level. So this could be, this could be a satire. It could be very sort of straight told, and you have to kind of imbue whatever that is. But anyways, um, oh, my camera work is exceptional. I was just looking at my monitor, even in the scene. But John Steinbeck is someone who was able to, uh, and not everybody should. I mean, this is not literature does not have to. There is no manual that says you have to, if you don't depict the plight of the working poor, then you're not an author. That's not what I'm saying either. I mean, right? So let's shift gears here. I don't know. I see people typing like nonstop, and I don't see anything in chat. So excuse, sorry about that. I can't read what's not going on. I don't know. Second Life is weird that way. But so let's shift gears here real quick. The Catcher in the Rye. I don't know if you remember that. Oh, here's a comment coming in. Shyla says, I think it has a lot to do with research as well, especially into personal experiences. Shyla, I think that's actually precisely my point, right? My point is that when somebody comes out with a 700, 800 page book juxtaposing uh, a working class kid from Hawaii and a wealthy party scene in New York in the 80s, um, and is not able to, able or willing or whatever, it doesn't see that the interesting thing here is to explore um, the allure of money and the shallow pursuits uh, of luxury and self gratification, but only describes how the kid is sort of wide-eyed, like in a candy store, looking around, finding everything incredible. That to me is really bad. That is to me, not only sorry, that's a failed assignment. But again, I don't know what her assignment is. I mean, she's the one giving herself the assignment. It's a bestseller. She sells a lot of books. But if you tell me, hey, I found this author who wrote a really cool story about the 80s and juxtaposing different classes, and I read 100 pages and I find that kind of superficial take on it without any exploration of the implications of modern capitalism. And then I see an article in the New Yorker where uh, I see an article in the New Yorker where I find out that that person is a editor of a style magazine. The name escapes me now, and she parties herself and she's like glamorous and all this kind of stuff. I can tell you that from my taste point of view, I'm gonna read Steinbeck. I'm gonna pass on that. I'm sorry, right? So, and that's where my wife was very disappointed because she said, "Well, he is a native Hawaiian. Well, she's Chinese, but she grew up in Hawaii. Um, and here's somebody with this varied background. She must have an insight." And I think this is kind of my point, long-winded way of saying, if you look at a person from a specific cultural background and you infer that this person has a greater insight into the struggles of that particular, the complexity of that culture, um, you're making a lot of assumptions because that person may again be in a stratosphere of a certain class where they have no knowledge and maybe not even in an interest in engaging with the working class of um, of their particular culture. So it takes a um, an openness, a willingness, and a specific goal also to depict those um, the tensions with those within those contexts. And if you just want to write a thriller, or a drama, there's nothing wrong with that. Um, it's just a different market. Probably you sell more books if you're a little bit uncritical, right? If you find a nice like tie it all up and say, hey, this kid made it, like these redemption type Hollywood stories. Oops, I hear some banging. The redemption
Oh,
type stories of like what comes to mind is a Sean Connery movie with a black kid, inner city kid, and Sean Connery is like this literature guy, and then he discovers the kid, and then the kid makes it,
I,
these kind of things. Stranger, oh, Stranger, we have him back.
yeah,
Go ahead,
yeah. You did trigger something in me, a memory of
please.
watching some TV talk show decades ago, probably it was. I know it was, in fact, because I can remember talking back in those days to someone about having seen it and my reaction to it. It was some anyway. It was like the host of the show, and I think there were like three of these kind of New York City elitist literary critic type people.
Oh, those kind of shows, yeah,
You know those, yeah,
yeah.
and
The
and
gatekeepers, the gatekeepers of
they were
taste. Yep.
talking, yeah, they were talking about, yeah, yeah, you kind of got it, the kind, And at one point he asked them, who's a really, who do you think's just a really overrated,
Hmm.
what writers are given? And at least two of the three, if not all three, named John Steinbeck as
God
somebody
damn.
who was really a worthless writer, but got, like, and
You
it
know, I
just
mean,
blew me.
without,
I
I
mean,
mean, this is
it's a,
unbelievable.
of all, and it's like to their mind, I guess if it wasn't about the sexual neuroses of a certain kind of New York City intellectual, it can't
Exactly.
be real literature.
Exactly.
It's
It's
like,
what you're describing, I mean, without knowing that, having seen this program, I can see it in my mind's eye. And what you're describing, Stranger, I think is a phenomenon that is very widespread. It also happens in journalism, quite frankly. There are certain, and oftentimes they're very well-meaning, but these are very rarefied elites that live in their own circles, and they want to see, and they're the gatekeepers to stories and to voting something up or down. And this is purely speculative on my part. When you say that they said, well, Steinbeck is overrated, I I can guess because I'm engaging now with the book club with a few people who work in publishing, and they say publishing is a cesspool of elitism and of racism and misogyny and all the good stuff, where people have disdain for working class writers. And we were talking about right now, right? We're talking about now. We're talking about meetings. These people tell me about. I mean, this is a world that's foreign to me. I'm only intersecting with it now with the book club, but these people tell me, oh yeah, they're, the meetings where they go like, ah, we should have some working class guy because, they just look at the quota, they look at the, oh, we have to have one working class guy. And then, oh, we got to have one black guy. It's like, oh, it's just completely ridiculous. And what you're saying against Stranger, complete speculation on my part. I would venture to guess that the reason why they rejected Steinbeck, and it would be interesting to find more context. Maybe you find out when that show was, but they probably had disdain for him because he was championing the working class, and he was holding a mirror in front of us all to see the negative effects of unbridled capitalism. I mean, there's no doubt in
also, I
my mind.
think they just, as the writer that I talked to about it, a guy who was a writing teacher of mine at that time, that they just don't, and he did come from a rural,
Hmm.
himself, the guy I was talking to, background and all, and he said they just can't understand, they can't relate to the kind of characters that,
They can't relate to the character. Exactly. They go, oh,
Steinbeck,
I don't work in the
they
fields. Right. The only
you know,
intersection that I have with a Mexican
it
field
just
worker
has,
is with
yeah,
when I go to my favorite New York restaurant, and a Mexican guy serves me my dessert.
yeah. It was like, they just,
Monkey says something important, of course, and again, we're speculating here as to the reasons. It's a matter of taste and trends, absolutely. But you know, when you are a gatekeeper uh, on in media as a host of a literary program, for example, um, you are most often recruited from a certain background. That's just a reality. There is it's just for a working class or a minority person to, we're talking again, of course, here in the American context, the European context to some extent. I would like to hear people from other cultural realms as well on this, but there you don't even get there. I mean, there was piece on German radio, which a radio documentary about a how they recruit hosts in public media. And we have a pretty good public broadcasting system here with all its flaws, but the way people are recruited into the system and the chief executive in charge of hiring was quoted, and he was on this program, and he said, well, we only have room in our team for one person with a migration background. We don't need more, and that's enough. It's what he says. So they look at this as a quota. They don't look at, is this person qualified more than this other person. They look at, oh yeah, we got somebody with a migration background. Parents were guest workers from Turkey, so we got this guy covered, and then the rest is quote unquote the normal people. Jessica says would have been worse if it was a working class women. Yeah, absolutely, no doubt about that. Um, all right.
What?
Oh, hello,
What?
Drax.
Hello.
It's me, Monkey. um, I'd like to suggest also that you're talking about the regular sort of the traditional way of getting a book published, and true that that could be very elitist, and there are assumptions about who writes a book and how that gets there. But we do have other routes right now where people can self-publish. Or where blogs become books and things like that. So there's more opportunities today than the traditional go through a publisher
With all due
book.
respect, as a independent media maker who was able to feed his family for the last 30 years, I am all for these kind of things, but it is unfortunately a pipe dream to say that these are viable
Mm,
alternatives to make a living. It is just not happening. The gatekeepers in publishing, in the music industry as well, but publishing much more so, if you follow those um, if you follow those kind of scandals that happen with a regularity that is really shocking, how people are being pushed out. um, I think that's a big problem because we need to hear these stories. We need to hear stories from indigenous people. We need to hear stories from women. We need to hear stories from women of color. They don't even get to the table. And then the book that gets published, and the name, of course, I don't have it handy, was about this experience of the refugee from Mexico. It was a huge scandal um, where a white woman was getting a $1 million contract or more for a book that is basically depicting the plight of um, a Mexican immigrant that is being American dirt. There you go, Bunny. Thank you, thank you. And so that was a huge scandal, and at least that got some publicity, and it was a huge outcry around it. So that hopefully, gets a little bit into people's heads what is happening in this industry. Um, yeah, but these are private businesses. These are also monopolies. There's the big three that basically own everything. The Random House, Penguin. I don't know if Penguin is owned by Random House or the other way around. But so we're talking about essentially with, yes, some smaller imprints. And yes, I'm not against self-publishing, but self-publishing is also dominated by a behemoth called Amazon, who routinely does not pay people. Sorry guys, I'm Debbie Downer. All these good ideas, I'm gonna shoot them down. Uh, as if we're not depressed enough. I see Paradise typing, but then I don't see it in the chat. Oh wait, now I see it here. Paradise says to break into that world is almost impossible. I think you're referring to the publishing world. It's impossible to break into this world. To become successful, you must assume the trappings, either become a hypocrite or numb all your senses and values. Um, well, it's a commercial business, but the problem is that people from different backgrounds, and I mean, again, this is not unlike what's happening in other media. I mean, this is not unlike what's happening in Hollywood, which is another big commercial business dominated by big behemoth monopolies, where stories of, let's say, uh, indigenous background or Asian, let's be specific with an Asian character, are cast with a white actor, or a Mexican character cast by a white actor looks a little browner, instead of the equally qualified actor from that cultural background. Now, I'm not saying that these people couldn't play that, but I, I think it's absolutely absurd to culturally appropriate a story in Hollywood by a let's say an Asian character and then cast it with a white person. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
You just reminded me of something else, which was this was quite a while back. It was back when Carlos Castaneda's
Oh,
was
Carlos Castaneda,
popular.
yes. When
And I
he,
was quite a fan of
oh,
Castaneda,
me
and I ended
too.
up reading this book that came out from this woman who was some kind of Southern California woman or whatever, who was presenting herself as kind of a female.
Hmm.
Castaneda, like she'd gone out and found native people and learned from them, and was bringing us there. I think the point at which I threw
And she
that
was a
book
white
across
woman
the
from
room
Orange County.
was, yeah,
No.
yeah, yeah. Well, of course, Castaneda. Well, I guess Castaneda wasn't white exactly, but anyway, I mean, it could, in theory, it could have been true. But I think the point at which I threw that book across the room was when she was some evil sorceress who she was, having problems with. She was really upset because the woman had stolen her Gucci bag. And when I
Okay,
read
wait a
that
minute.
line,
Okay, wait.
she stole my Gucci bag.
Wait, I'm
I,
confused. But you're talking about the woman. Okay, so you're talking about a woman who wanted to be the female Carlos Castaneda. And real quick, Carlos Castaneda, I'm reading from Wikipedia, was an American writer, starting with the teachings of Don Juan, 1968. Castaneda wrote a series of books that purport to describe training in shamanism that he received under the tutelage of a Yaqui man of knowledge named Don Juan. So he's actually here also seen. It says he's an author and also an anthropologist. Um, so yeah, he wrote. Actually, I have these books.
he
Yeah.
initially supposedly met this guy as an assignment, like his graduate thing in anthropology or whatever. But then, and the fact is,
And he invented everything.
it's widely believed that his books are fiction,
Hmm.
and I don't, while still a fan of his, I think that may well be true. That
So this interest. Let me ask you a specific
he was a
question here,
good
stranger.
fiction writer, and
Right.
and I think he had his own reasons for you know writing the books in that way, and he but
Wait. So this is interesting.
and I would have been open to this, even if she was a well-to-do, woman or whatever, I might have been open to her, if
Before
she
we
had
go.
shown some wisdom or whatever. But I mean, the idea that she didn't see the silliness of this, claiming she is, what a tragedy, this woman stole my Gucci bag.
Hold on. I still don't understand the thing with the woman. Who said that with the Gucci bag? Is that Carlos Castaneda
The
said that?
author, no, no, no. This woman who was trying to cash in, is what I'm saying,
Oh,
on
I
the
see.
popularity of Castaneda by writing them, you know,
Okay, but
similar, something that was supposed to be similar to his stuff, from a female like perspective, but it was so obviously she was nowhere in the intellectual class of what Carlos Castaneda.
so I understand.
Whether Castaneda's books were actually fiction rather than fact.
Right.
He was a brilliant, guy who obviously had, and by whatever source, learned a hell of a lot about these native cultures and all, and put,
So let's
you
be
know,
clear here. Let me just fill
yeah.
people in who are not familiar with this. So Carlos Castaneda here, he said that he learned this spiritual path and the teachings about shamanism from a guy named Don Juan. Um, but this Don Juan never existed, and he basically uh, invented all this. And so this is a different point. But since we're talking about this, I want to know from you, Strange, and you hinted at it. So the fact that he made this up, is this now is this fraud?
I guess it's a good question. I don't know that he ever admitted, publicly
Because I
that
don't
he
know if he
that
ever
some
said that this is
but
true,
the
right?
initial book was actually I first read the book when an anthropology professor had it as one of the required books in his
Mm-hmm.
class.
Mm-hmm.
The anthropology professor had taken his first book seriously, that it
Mm-hmm.
was, yeah. In fact, he said this gives you a feeling for what it's like to actually be an anthropologist field.
Because if you do
And
this in in a journalistic context, then you get fired. Like the guy that
oh
there's
well,
like
yeah, sure.
remember the guy from there was also a guy from the German Spiegel who invented everything whole cloth. But Carlos Castaneda still I mean he contributed enormous insight. I think his books are incredibly important. Yes, and it's fiction, but the characters are transforming you, the reader, if you go on this journey. And so this is a very gray area. I mean, if he indeed were going around, and I don't know that he did back in the day, where he claimed that this was all true, and he made this, he would build his brand on it, then that would be maybe a little bit fraudulent. But if he left it out in the open, how he arrived at that, I think then that would be rather genius. So I have to look into the history of
I
this.
I haven't even, I could at this point maybe I should go back and see what if at any. I don't think Castaneda is still alive.
No, no, he
Don't think he
passed away.
lived a long life.
Here it
Yeah,
says on
but
Wikipedia,
he
scholars
but
have
whether he
debated.
ever
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah.
Whether he claimed
Yeah,
that it was
it's
true.
still debated. There's still people who just believe it's all true. But
Scholars have
oh,
debated whether Castaneda actually served as an apprentice to the alleged sorcerer Don Juan, or if he invented the whole Odyssey. Castaneda's books are classified as nonfiction by their publisher, although there is consensus among critics that they are largely, if not completely, fictional. So this is quite interesting because as a documentary filmmaker, and big fan of Werner Herzog, and I forgot what term he uses, but there is a term of sort of like heightened reality. That's not what Werner Herzog uses, but you're massaging your. This is a deep question. What reality really is, and what dark.
interesting that he did are you familiar with Robert Anton Wilson's
Oh,
writing?
absolutely. The Illuminati
And he's a
Trilogy,
guy
the
who
best.
absolutely deliberately plays with what's real and what isn't,
Yep.
in his writing, and apparently who was I wish I could remember who the third person was, but he mentioned that Castaneda was in the same class with him, a professor who kind of taught that sort of idea, anyway, of,
But Castaneda and
the
Robert.
technique of making reality questionable, and whatnot. But
Oh boy, now you're triggering me to mention a book that I'm obsessed with called America and the Cult of the Cactus Boots, a diagnostic. And strange, if you give me your real life address, I'll have it shipped to you. I'll buy you one, I'll ship it to you. And everybody who wants to be in the book club, maybe I find some money under the mattress and I'll ship you one too. Jessica gets one, but I'm a little worried because Jessica just put in the chat, I have the books by Castaneda, but I really don't understand any of it. So Jessica is a very intelligent person, and I don't think it has anything to do with intelligence. But you might not be a big fan of America, the Cult of the Cactus Boots. Robert Anton Wilson, because Stranger mentioned it. Robert Anton Wilson, together with Robert Shea, wrote a book called the Illuminati Trilogy, which is hilarious and an absolute must read. And I would say it's very different from Castaneda because they Robert Anton Wilson and Robert Shear, they I mean, it sucks you in and you start to question reality, but it was pretty clear that they did this on
Well, he
purpose.
also wrote some stuff that was nonfiction, and then he wrote some stuff where I think, deliberately wanted you to wonder whether this one's fiction or nonfiction, you know? Yeah, it's
That I'm
like
not familiar. I know people told me about it, like Marianne here in Second Life. She's a huge fan. Wasn't he also? Didn't he start the church? Like, what is the name of this church? Um,
he actually put out a cassette tape of a lecture once he gave called "Religion for the Hell of It" or something like that, where he talked about a number of created religions that were quite eccentric, you know.
I thought he.
But
Oh, you know what?
I don't think he himself formed one, but you might be thinking of the Church of the Subgenius,
That's
which is
the
one
Church of the
very
Subgenius.
fascinating.
Yes.
That's one I'd advise people to get into. Yeah, learn, you know, get
What are
some of
they
their
about? Oh, we're
material.
getting so far off topic. What are they about?
Yeah.
Can you give us the thumbnail sketch of the Church of the
Oh gosh,
Subgenius?
I don't think so, really. You almost got one of those where you got to almost immerse yourself in it to understand
That's I
the
thought he.
parody.
Yeah.
It's a
It's a
religion that
parody.
created as a parody of cults and religion, and yet, you know, you can find lots of interesting food for thought in reading their literature and what.
Oh boy, as if I need another rabbit hole to go down. I think a stranger.
Research that they
Did
got
you?
this guy
Yeah.
who
You,
looks like a 1950s TV dad, you know, with a pipe in his mouth and all,
that's
and they
right.
call him Bob, and Bob is their god, like, or their their prophet, you know. And he was some kind of salesman from the 1950s who had, you know, yeah, you know,
Yeah, yeah. That's how he looks.
it was, yeah, it's, and one of their concepts they worship is slack, you know. That's what you should seek in life is slack, you know.
And now it's a piece of
And
software.
and I remember in one of their books in the corner it says, "How do they steal slack?" and it simply shows a picture of an alarm clock with a, you know, an arrow pointing at it. Yeah,
Oh
that
man,
steals slack
we
from
have
you.
a lot of rabbit holes to go into. Real Stranger, did you mentioned before that Carlos Castaneda and Robert Anton Wilson, and there is a third person, and you know
Yeah,
what
and I wish I could remember
wait
who the third
what
one, because he
randomly
also though was somebody who would play these games with your head, you know,
okay,
like
I'll
that.
tell
But
you who
yeah,
that is or who that could be. Alan Watts. No?
I
You know
don't
who
think it
Alan Watts
was,
is?
but I can almost see why. I could see why you might, yeah, have thought that. But
Alan Watts,
yeah,
when I first came to America and I worked as a delivery driver in the LA County, I listened to KPFK, and Alan Watts was giving lectures. You find those on YouTube. They are amazing. I mean, see, this is now we're going full circle. We started a little bit about talking about terrible times and war and how do we kind of remain sane and mentally healthy without completely shutting down into escapism and without the doom scrolling. I actually do recommend Alan Watts lectures on YouTube. I mean, honestly, I think Alan Watts is. Unfortunately, there was also a little bit of a Me Too thing going on, but you know, it was a different era, 60s to 60s. You know, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make light of it, but
yeah, I know.
I was like, I don't know where I read this. I go like, oh no, you too, Alan Watts, come on. But I don't know any specifics. But the Alan Watts lectures you find on YouTube are amazing. And when I was driving around in the at night with my little van, with my Ford Econovan, I was listening to KPFK, listening to Alan Watts, and then you know who else I was listening to? Joe Frank. You guys know who Joe Frank is? Oh boy. So this is the rabbit hole. So we have a bunch of rabbit holes. But this is the rabbit hole you should go into. I'm going to post this link. I'm going to also post it into YouTube. And there are some audio clips there. Joe Frank passed away not too long ago. He was a radio producer. He produced radio dramas, and he was speaking um, and making up different characters, but it was incredibly real. It was indistinguishable from reality. He would do like calls. He would do a radio piece. Let me give you a quick example. Um, Flenser is saying here from Alan Watts. Alan Watts, check it out. But also please check out Joe Frank. Joe Frank had a radio piece that I remember I listened to this on the actual radio when this was live. It was a guy calling. It was as if a radio host was calling a normal person who won a huge prize, a trip. I forgot what the trip was. So imagine you're sitting in a car and you're turning on the radio, and the radio host says, "Hey, now we're gonna call the winner of our prize." And we're talking about this first ran in the early 90s. And so somebody picks up the phone. The person on the phone says, "Yeah, you're the winner. You remember you were applying for this thing and you won this huge prize." And he goes like, "Oh my God, that's amazing. Thank you. Thank you." And you hear in the background a woman, "Hey, who's on the phone?" And then the guy on the phone says, "Shut up." And then the radio host goes, "Oh, well, you just have to give us your address, and then we send you the thing." And then somebody on the phone in the background again says, "Who's on the phone? Hang up the phone." And the guy on the phone says, "Shut up, you bitch." And then you hear big smack, but it was all staged. I don't know if I'm relaying this story well, right? But I was driving in the car, and I thought this was a live show where the host of this show is calling the winner of whatever contest, and whoever he called had a domestic disturbance thing live on the radio, but it was all produced. It was basically War of the Worlds in a sort of a micro context. But anyway, that's Joe Frank. Kitten Duo, thank you so much for your super chat. Kitten Duo says thank you everyone, and we love you, Kitten, that you're here with us, but you're also unfortunately still disembodied. But that's okay.
You know, another guy who played those kind of reality head trips and did it as a journalist was Hunter S.
Hunter
Thompson.
S. Thompson. There you go.
Thompson, I mean, his supposed journalism would throw in obviously, made up bizarre stuff,
Yeah.
just to freak you out.
But that's the thing, and I mean, this is something that I'm so happy that we're discussing this, Hunter S. Thompson, um, because this is a topic that I think we should always discuss uh, as much as we can, is because I am convinced the deeper truth. I'm not against. I mean, there is. I was a news guy, but this is the thing that people sometimes, especially in this moment, say, how can you in this moment, how can you read a book, right? While there's war in the Ukraine and Putin is crazy and he has his finger on the button. I am personally not advocating completely, uh, you know, uh, running away from reality or from the factual news on the ground as they're happening. But the factual news on the ground, they're one part. If we seek a deeper truth, the deeper truth is not delivered through, you know, good, solid journalism, which is incredibly important for a civil society. There's no doubt about that. It's not an either or proposition. But well sourced, critical, investigative journalism is one part. Literature, art, music is another part. That's a huge part to understand why the hell we are on this freaking rotating little, I was going to say disc, but then again, I'm not a flat earther. Um, yeah, that's a succinct way of putting it, Monkey. Not only often, but always, always. So can art, so can a painting. Um, this is the stuff that transcends who we are, the particles. Okay, I gotta quit. I can't even talk anymore. I need something to drink. Kitten says one day I will be there in person. Yes, Kitten. Kitten will come as a kitten into the book club, and we'll have a special little kitten. What are they called? Uh, where the cats sleep in. No, not catnip. I mean, yes, she gets a cat, but you know the little the I was gonna say the receptacle, the bed. What are they called? God, my English. I'm losing it. Baskets. Yeah, basket. I guess you can say basket. Kitten basket.
Or just cat bad. I've heard that.
Yeah, cat bed. That's there. So now, um, I'm gonna say goodbye to everybody and also goodbye to the folks on the stream. I was going to cancel next week, but I'm gonna do it. The film is actually in progress, and I feel I can get it done. But I wanted to have this. Monkey says my sweater is the cat's bed. Yeah, used to be my guitar case, but then she peed on it and I had to throw it out. Um, we will have a show next week also at 11 a.m. And then we'll go back after the film to 12 p.m. with guests, and we have a whole bunch of really cool guests. Check out the calendar. And again, if you're watching this and you're either not from a predominant Caucasian Anglo-Saxon background, sorry, white guys, you're not allowed to email me. I want book recommendations from different cultural. No, I say this tongue in cheek. If you are knowledgeable about other cultural realms, please email me. Except for Little Brett, she's not allowed to email me. Little Brett just fell asleep. No, that she just woke up. I'm like a teacher. It's like checking if Little Brett is still alive. Okay, I'm gonna quit and I'm gonna poof as well. I have a new poofing effect. Thank you so much for coming, folks. It was actually, again, with the anxiety of post-production, it is, oops, I poofed too early. Is, it's like, oh, the book club, I need to edit more. And then I go like, you know what? And then it's really intellectually invigorating to hang out with you guys, especially now that Stranger has also mentioned Carlos Castaneda. So I'm going to go to the other room and look at my Castaneda books. And yeah, auf Wiedersehen and good night. Follow the news, follow the movie news. Then I will do an announcement. I think this probably Friday or maybe Monday. Bye.